What's your body of proof?
As a working mom, I'm thankful my mom is able to help out. So I bought her the all-new Jitterbug Flip from Great Call. It's so easy to use, and with a larger screen and bigger buttons, it's even easier to dial. There's also a 5-star button on the keypad.
One touch and you'll be immediately connected to a highly trained agent who can confirm your location, assess the situation, and get you the help you need.
Service starts as low as $14.99 a month. Available at Best Buy or Rite Aid.
This is not a bed. It's a revolution in sleep. The new Sleep Number 360 Smart Bed is on sale now from $8.99 during Sleep Number's biggest sale of the year. It senses your movement and automatically adjusts to keep you both comfortable. It even helps with this. So you wake up ready to put your pedal to the metal. And now all beds are on sale. Save 50% on the new Sleep Number 360 Limited Edition Smart Bed, plus 24-month financing on all beds, only for a limited time. Sleep Number, proven quality sleep.
Good morning. Again, some quick headlines. A mission to honor a father's memory ends in tragedy. One man is dead and his brother seriously injured after their small plane crashed in Massachusetts. The men were trying to scatter their dad's ashes over their family home, and then tragedy struck. Horrible story. All right, Griff, I'm going to turn it over to you, buddy.
Thanks, Ed. We're going to bring in now Kevin Jackson. He's a Fox News contributor. You know him. He is the executive director of the Black Sphere. Kevin, good morning to you. I want to talk to you a little bit about a story. We have, of course, the story, the passing of hero John McCain. But there's another story out there, and that is what the DNC is doing over superdelegates, choosing to get rid of them, perhaps a day late and $1 short for Bernie Sanders. What do you make of this?
Well, the Democrats are known for cheating, and Hillary Clinton was certainly one to use the superdelegate process, and I think the Democrats have realized the futility of what happened during the last election cycle, where Hillary was just shoehorned in. It was pretty much made, the Democratic nomination was made for her. So I think that the Democrats are taking a serious look at how the perception of what they did to Bernie is being perceived in their party.
It's not a perception. I mean, it is a reality, Kevin. I mean, for the channel, I was covering the Bernie Sanders supporters in the protest movement outside of the convention in Philly at the DNC. And unlike protests that I've covered in the past, in 2008, and other ones, you know, they were legitimately mad with the message because of what had been done by Clinton's own admission. So my question to you is, do you think the Democrats are going to get this right, or are they headed for more turmoil?
Yeah, interesting question, Griff. The answer is, will they get it right in terms of process? Probably. I think that they'll still try to implement rules that will let them shoehorn in the candidates of their choice. And let's face it, the Republicans have tried to do the same thing. But the Democrats have a bigger problem. The reality that faces them in terms of what is the Democrats' message going into 2018 and 2020? They still don't have one. They've gone from better, better, better to trying to steal the concept of MAGA from Make America Great Again from President Trump. And the biggest problem that they face, quite honestly, Griff, is the president. Donald Trump's a rock star in terms of his policy. Look at every demographic that the Democrats dominate typically, and Donald Trump has essentially been chipping away. The walkaway movement from Democrats is real, and a lot of Democrats don't believe it.
That's a great point, Kevin. So do you believe that this decision by the DNC was made more out of trying to do the right thing in the wake of wronging Bernie Sanders, or more out of fear and anticipation of Donald Trump in 2020?
I think it's a combination of both. I think they know that the Bernie, I forget what they called it at the time, but the Bernie Sanders group that was so offended when this happened, we know when they use the superdelegates to kind of cheat Bernie out of the nomination. So there's a part of that, but then Bernie sold out. So I think that delegation that ship has sailed to some degree. But I do believe there is a reaction that's occurring right now for the Democrats, because the blue wave is it's a pebble in the ocean. It's like throwing a rock into the ocean. It's gone. And as much as they try to reassure themselves that they're going to have a good midterm, it isn't going to happen. The Republicans will win, maintain the House in the midterms, and they will gain Senate seats. So I think that there is a reaction to part of that, yes.
And Kevin, we're just about out of time, but I wanted to give you a second. Bernie Sanders even put out a kind statement remembering Senator McCain. Your thoughts this morning as we mourn this hero?
Well, I feel for the McCain family, you know, and I'm friendly with Megan. I did Outnumbered with her and met her, and she was very magnanimous in helping me in my move to Phoenix. And needless to say, here in Phoenix, he's an icon. So I feel for the family. I think from a legislative point of view, and I think Brett made this comment that McCain does have some people that feel like he let Arizona down. But on this day, I think we have to dismiss that and just feel for his family.
Kevin Jackson, thank you very much for your time this morning. Have a good Sunday.
My pleasure. Thanks, Rick.
All right. The political world remembering Senator John McCain. The tributes pouring in as we honor McCain when Fox and Friends continues.
This program is brought to you by Flonase Allergy Relief. You are greater than your allergies.
You wouldn't accept an incomplete job from anyone else. So why accept it from your allergy pills? Most pills don't finish the job because they don't relieve nasal congestion. Flonase Allergy Relief is different. Flonase relieves sneezing, itchy, watery eyes, and a runny nose, plus nasal congestion, which pills don't. Flonase helps block 6 key inflammatory substances. Most pills only block 1, and 6 is greater than 1. Start your day with Flonase for more complete allergy relief. Flonase, this changes everything.
Folks, if you look out your window, we're flying over IHOP's delicious international pancake combos.
Sweet tres leches.
Pancakes. Let's back this thing up and take another look.
Go on a pancation with international pancakes at IHOP, starting at $4.99.
At Safe Light Auto Glass, we really pride ourselves on making it easy for you to get your windshield fixed. With Safe Light, you can see exactly when we'll be there, saving you time for what you love most.
Fox Nation. Find out more at foxnation.com now.
With so many mattresses out there, how do you know which one is really the best? Only Purple passes the durability test, body heat test, and the all-new HED test, or human egg drop test for the layman. The best test to determine a mattress's comfort and support. Ready, Billy?
No, I just have to...
Perfect. Just look at how the Purple Smart Comfort Grid, made from a super comfy yet ultra supportive material called hyperelastic polymer, cradled those unfertilized chickies. And yeah, they're pretty real. Now how about that memory foam? See, unlike memory foam, Purple's unique design cradles your pressure points and redistributes support to the rest of your body, leaving your spine properly aligned. So no more back pain, no matter your body type, sleeping position, or frequency of nightmare. Oh, gee! For a limited time, buy any Purple mattress and get a free Purple pillow.
Alexa, tell ADT to set goodnight mode.
Turn down service. Brought to you by ADT, a smart home with 24/7 protection, designed and installed just for you.
At Visiting Angels, we understand the importance of family. This history, this bond, this commitment, this love. What we hold most sacred are the people we care for, our loved ones and yours. Whether you're nearby or miles away, you can be confident that we treat and care for your family like it's our own. Visiting Angels, America's choice in senior home care.
The White House this morning honoring the late Arizona Senator John McCain, flying the American flag at half-staff, as you can see in that live picture right now, 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue.
His daughter Megan sharing a heartfelt message, reading in part, "All that I am is thanks to him. Now that he is gone, the task of my lifetime is to live up to his example."
Jillian Turner is live in Washington with more on those remembering his legacy. Good morning, Jillian.
Good morning, guys. The response last night and this morning here in Washington, where the senator spent much of his adult life, has been mournful on both sides of the aisle, with the current administration and former American presidents all expressing a deep sense of loss. President Trump tweeting at the McCain family last night, "My deepest sympathies and respect go out to the family of Senator John McCain. Our hearts and prayers are with you." And from the Vice President, commendation of McCain's military service. He says in part, "We honor his lifetime of service to this nation in our military and in public life. His family and friends will be in our prayers. God bless John McCain." And former President Obama writing in part, "Few of us have been tested the way John once was or requested to show the kind of courage that he did. But all of us can aspire to the courage to put the greater good above our own. At John's best, he showed us what that means. And for that, we are all in his debt." Former President George W. Bush also writing in a statement, "Some voices are so vibrant, it's hard to think of them stilled. John McCain was a man of deep conviction and a patriot of the highest order." From across the aisle, former President Jimmy Carter writes, "John McCain was a man of honor, a true patriot in the best sense of the word. Americans will be forever grateful for his heroic military service and for his steadfast integrity as a member of the United States Senate." It's noteworthy that both current and former leaders of the free world from all across the political spectrum here in Washington are rallying together in their grief this morning. Back to you.
That's a good point. You know, a lot of the military leaders out there as well, the Commandant of the Marine Corps, General Neller, and the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs Staff, Joe Dunford, saying that Senator McCain exemplified what it means to be a warrior.
Yeah.
And it's really a testament.
Secretary Mattis put out a strong statement last night, almost immediately as well, of course, from the Defense Department. And you think about when we talk about legacy and we talk about service, it's not just John McCain. He's had children who have served in our military. His father was an admiral in the Navy. His grandfather, an admiral in the Navy. So the
long
ties,
history of military service in that family. I'd also say I think that the coverage that we're seeing this morning has to be encouraging to so many of the young troops that are all over the world defending our freedom. So they're seeing what appreciation our country has for a veteran, for a war hero, for a former prisoner of war. America loves their veterans.
He did. He traveled the world, you know, quite extensively on holidays and other times, Thanksgivings and Christmases, to pay tribute, to spend time with his soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marine in Iraq and Afghanistan.
Who were away from their families.
Who were away from their families, and he never lost that. But, you know, I can tell you, when I got to go, I was with Greta once, and we were in Vietnam, and we stood at the Hanoi Hilton. And to think that his young career began when he faced down his captors, and the legacy he leaves behind today.
So true, Griff.
Remarkable.
So true. Still ahead, Senator John McCain, a loyal defender of American freedom after spending 5 years as a POW.
We mentioned a short time ago that Joey Jones, you've seen him many times in our area. He lost both his legs in a bomb blast while serving in Afghanistan. He's here to discuss John McCain's lasting impact on men and women in uniform like himself. Next.
We hope to serve in helping keep America the strong, aspiring, inspirational beacon of liberty and defender of the dignity of all human beings and their right to freedom and equal justice. That is the cause that binds us and is so much more powerful and worthy than the small differences that divide us.
Experience the great lengths we go to in testing our performance line at the Lexus Golden Opportunity Sales Event.
Lease the 2018 IS300 and IS300 all-wheel drive for these terms.
Experience amazing at your Lexus dealer.
If a sandwich needs a little something extra, you add bacon to it. If a sandwich is perfect just the way it is, you add bacon to it. Arby's, we have the meats.
Whether I'm right, whether I'm wrong, whether I find a place in this world or never belong, I've gotta be me, I've gotta be me. What else can I be but what I am?
There's so much clutter in your place, you wish you could erase. And the bathroom near the foyer is a mood destroyer. It's all ugly and outdated. It's time you just upgraded. Now the Bagster bag is here, and this mess will disappear. So you schedule a pickup, it goes off without a hiccup. You're smiling and moving on, and that's the joy of gone. Get the Bagster bag Project.
Away is where curiosity can run its course, where little feet run wild, where laughter runs rampant, and adventure runs in the family. Find your away. For a dealer in the RV that's right for you, visit GoRVing.com.
When did it become okay for men to be lazier, softer, weaker? Get Ageless Male with ingredients that promote free testosterone, muscle size with workouts, and your libido. Get back to greatness with Ageless Male.
Online dating? I know people meet that way, but where would I even begin?
Open laptop, go to OurTime.com, look for free. It's easy to take a look on Our Time, the fastest growing dating site for people over 50.
Your one item would be the Name Your Price tool?
It helps people save on car insurance. Why wouldn't it save me?
Why? What would you bring? A boat?
Huh.
We're reflecting on the legacy Senator John McCain leaves behind, the former Republican presidential nominee, longtime senator, losing his year-long battle with brain cancer.
He's passed away at the age of 81. The maverick of the Senate went home to Arizona for treatment in December.
On Friday, Senator McCain's family announced he was ending his treatment. He passed away Saturday afternoon, just days before his 82nd birthday. Tucker Carlson now with a look at McCain's legacy.
John Sidney McCain III was born in 1936 on a military base in the Panama Canal Zone to one of the most prominent families in the United States Navy. McCain's grandfather accepted the Imperial Japanese surrender aboard the USS Missouri in Tokyo Bay in 1945. His father, also a four-star general, later commanded all American naval forces in the Pacific. After graduating from Episcopal High School in Virginia, McCain followed their lead, entering the Naval Academy in the class of 1958. By the time war broke out in Vietnam, McCain was an aviator, having already bailed out of 2 airplanes during training. In June of 1967, he nearly lost his life for a 3rd time. A rocket aboard the aircraft carrier Forrestal went off accidentally and struck his plane as it idled on deck. 134 sailors died, but McCain rolled through the flames to safety.
I felt this tremendous blow to my airplane and saw the fire coming out, so I probably had reacted a little more quickly than those in the planes near me. Some of those in the planes near me didn't survive.
4 months later, his luck ran out. On October 26, 1967, during a daytime bombing mission over downtown Hanoi, McCain's plane was hit by a missile he later described as like a flying telephone pole. Gravely injured during ejection, McCain landed in a lake in front of thousands of angry North Vietnamese civilians, one of whom stabbed him in the groin with a bayonet. Authorities dragged McCain in chains to Hoa Lo Prison, later dubbed the Hanoi Hilton. To this day, there is a statue of John McCain on the banks of the lake where he was shot down, celebrating his capture.
He was terribly injured, fractured arms, broken knee, left arm was out of the socket. He had not been fed, and basically he was starving to death.
McCain's captors soon discovered he was an admiral's son, and they offered him early release as a propaganda coup. McCain refused, showering his guards with defiant profanity. He spent the next 3 years in solitary confinement being tortured with ropes. The experience pushed him repeatedly to the edge of death. He was sustained by fellow American prisoners with whom he communicated by tapping in code on the walls of the prison. One of those men was Medal of Honor recipient Air Force Colonel Bud Day.
Bud Day was the most steadfast, the most inspirational, and the toughest of anybody that I must have something to do with his Iowa upbringing.
McCain was finally released in 1973 to a hero's welcome back in America, but his health and his marriage were permanently damaged. To the end of his life, he could never fully raise his arms, and though as a rule he never mentioned it, he sometimes needed help to brush his hair and dress. In 1981, he retired from the Navy as a captain and moved to Arizona to marry Cindy Hensley, a teacher from a prominent Phoenix family. Encouraged by Ronald Reagan to run for Congress, McCain spent 2 terms in the House of Representatives before being elected to the Senate in 1986. McCain held that seat for 31 years. He became one of the most energetic and visible politicians in America, famous both for his subversive sense of humor and his savage temper. After a brush with scandal in 1989 during the savings and loan meltdown, McCain developed into a champion of campaign finance reform. The McCain-Feingold Law, passed in 2001, is maybe his signature legislative achievement. Although less well-known, McCain also spent decades working on behalf of American Indian tribes and airline deregulation, 2 of his personal passions. In 1999, McCain began a run for president. He crisscrossed the primary states for the better part of a year in an aging tour bus he called the Straight Talk Express. He was accompanied by former POWs and a star-struck press corps who were awed by the candidate's wit and candor and the reckless, exuberant way he ran. For a brief period, it looked like McCain might win the nomination. He beat George W. Bush in the New Hampshire primary by 19 points that year, but his seat-of-the-pants challenge collapsed soon after, and he conceded in March of 2000, returning to the Senate. McCain soon emerged as a leading voice on American foreign policy. He helped lead the charge for George W. Bush's invasion of Iraq in 2003, as well as for the bitterly debated troop surge in that country several years later. At the end of Bush's second term, McCain once again announced his candidacy for president. This time, he won the nomination. In a surprise move at the Republican convention in Minneapolis, McCain introduced his running mate, Alaska Governor Sarah Palin. He later conceded he barely knew Palin. Her addition boosted the ticket for a time, but in the end, unified media support for his opponent and a historic financial collapse that voters blamed on the Republican donor class proved insurmountable. McCain lost that race definitively in November. McCain's concession speech that year revealed as much about him as anything he ever said in public. Beneath the aviator's bluster and his legendary temper lay a bedrock of decency and a total commitment to good manners in the face of defeat.
Senator Obama and I have had and argued our differences, and he has prevailed. No doubt many of those differences remain. These are difficult times for our country, and I pledge to him tonight to do all in my power to help him lead us through the many challenges we face.
Back in the Senate, McCain retook his place as the most powerful voice for neoconservative foreign policy, expanded American military commitments abroad, nation building, the spread of democratic government. He rallied for military intervention in Libya against Muammar Gaddafi. He pushed for political reform in Egypt. He called for regime change in Syria. He became one of the few elected officials willing to argue for more American troops in Iraq and Afghanistan. Even as he remained ferociously hawkish on foreign affairs, McCain, like his hero and friend Arizona Democrat Mo Udall, moved steadily leftward on domestic matters, notably immigration. By the time the Republican Party nominated Donald Trump in the summer of 2016, McCain seemed close to a complete break with his own party. He pulled his endorsement of Trump and became one of the new president's most persistent critics. For a man battered by physical suffering in his early decades, McCain spent the second half of his life in hale health. He kept a travel schedule that would have exhausted seasoned athletes. He beat melanoma in 2000 and bore the scars on his face to prove it. But his final illness, an incurable brain tumor, could not be stopped. As news of his cancer was announced, McCain's colleagues in both parties acknowledged that Congress was losing a singular man.
You are defined by your courage, and you're redeemed by your loyalty. Courage and loyalty. I can think of no better description of the man we're honoring tonight, my friend John McCain.
The one thing that I like most about John McCain, he doesn't run away from the shortcomings. When you balance out John McCain's life, is something we admire. I don't know about you, but I feel like I've been very lucky to be in his shadow and to be his friend.
John McCain is survived by his wife Cindy, 7 children, and his mother Roberta, who was 106 years old and every bit as tough as her son.
Tucker mentioned Mo Udall, who was a mentor for John McCain, had a great sense of humor, ran for president like McCain did, a public official from Arizona. And McCain often would tell us the story about how Mo Udall went into New Hampshire in a barbershop. He said, "Hey, I'm Mo Udall. I'm running for president." One of the guys in a barber chair said, "Yeah, we were just laughing about that the other day." So Udall could laugh at himself. McCain could laugh at himself as well. But he also had a very serious legacy, especially when it came to the military. He spent more than 5 years in captivity in Vietnam, about 2 of those years in solitary confinement.
Our next guest, retired U.S. bomb technician Joey Jones, also sacrificed greatly for this country. He lost his legs in a bomb blast in Afghanistan.
He joins us now to reflect on Senator McCain's lasting impact on our military and its heroes. And Joey, what did Senator McCain mean to you?
Good morning, guys. I think Senator McCain showed me 40 years before I even need to know that although war is a thief and it'll steal you of your time, it doesn't have to steal you of your will for tomorrow. It might take pieces of your body, but it doesn't have to take pieces of your soul. All the time I talk to young Marines and young service members about the idea that surviving isn't thriving, and it's up to you which path you go down. And Senator McCain, to me, was always a symbol of that. You know, I guess you can say I came to the grand old party late. I didn't care about politics until 2008, 4 years into the Marine Corps, about to go to Afghanistan, having already survived Iraq. And that's when I really learned the story of Senator McCain, that it was beyond finance reform or a time in Congress, and learned about his time as a POW and how he treated this country when he came back. I just sent off a group of service members last week, and the last sentiment was that we need humility and triumph and fortitude and failure, and it's the time in between when we need resilience. And I think no man that I can speak of or that I've ever met, unlike Senator McCain, has seen triumph and defeat at the levels he has, but he probably changed this world the most during his time in between, and that's when he was most resilient.
Joey, you actually did get to meet him in 2011 at a dinner in Georgetown. Tell us about that.
I did. I oftentimes disarm people with my own humor, sometimes self-deprecating. And so I was at a dinner in 2011, just about a year after I lost my legs, raising money for a PTSD retreat that was, in my opinion, ahead of its time there in Northern Virginia. And towards the end of the dinner, he was asked to stand up and speak. It was very small, maybe 24 people at most. And as he started to speak, someone mentioned or said, you know, we still love you even after you lost the campaign. And asked how he was doing. And he said, well, you know, after the campaign in 2008, I slept like a baby. And everyone kind of looked puzzled. He said, you know, I would sleep for a couple hours, and then I'd get up and cry, and then I'd sleep for a couple hours, and I'd get up and cry. And I tell you, his delivery was unmatched. It was quite the moment. And I remember my first thought this morning was, you know, I never got a picture with him, but I got to meet him, and I thought, you know, that's very symbolic. I don't need a picture with someone that I have a memory like that with, and it just means so much to me to have gotten to know his daughter, Megan. She shows the integrity and fire that he's shown every day for 40 years. And so it means a lot to me to know we can celebrate him today.
I'm glad you mentioned that sense of humor, because when I think about you, and you're always so optimistic when you come on our air, and I can't even imagine how difficult it was for you to adjust to losing both your legs during your service in Afghanistan. But I would think that when I was covering John McCain, how did someone who spent 5.5 years in a military prison come out of it? He wasn't perfect. He had moments where he was angry. But by and large, he was very optimistic and sunny and wanted to make a difference in America. Talk about that connection you had with him, even before you knew him, that both of you found a way to find something positive, something good about some dark moments.
Well, quite honestly, I don't think it's that hard to find something positive about a country like this, where you can be born into any situation and make it your own. But I do believe when you give that much of yourself, for me it was physical, for him it was time, and I would argue that's much worse. When you give that much of yourself, when you step foot back on this country, you make a decision, you make a perspective. It was either all completely worth it and worth continuing to fight for, or it wasn't. And thinking that it wasn't is a dark path to go down. So for me, I wouldn't say it was easy, but it was an easy choice. And I would imagine for Senator McCain, it was much the same. I said at the beginning that there's a difference between surviving and thriving, and Senator McCain showed me that the latter is much more fun and much more fulfilling. And I think that he doesn't have shoes any of us can fill. But if I can show that that type of perspective exists in my own life, then I can honor him that way.
Well, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Joey. You know, Senator
guys.
McCain once said, "I fell in love with my country when I was a prisoner in another country," and I think that Joey really embodies that sentiment as well. Absolutely. Love of country in difficult moments. Thank you, Joey. Did James Comey lie to Congress about the FBI's investigation into Hillary Clinton's email? The new report is just out.
And we continue to honor Senator McCain with Sandra Smith when we come right back.
So I needed legal advice. And I heard that my cousin's wife's sister's husband was a lawyer, so I called him. But he never called me back.
If your cousin's wife's sister's husband isn't a lawyer, call LegalZoom and we'll connect you with an attorney. LegalZoom, where life meets legal.
This is Fracture. Just upload an image, place your order, and it'll show up at your door, beautifully printed directly on glass. And this isn't just another frame, not just another canvas. This is new. This is a Fracture. Visit FractureMe.com and print one today.
Shopping for our home on Wayfair is so easy. They should make a jingle. Wayfair, you make home shopping easy.
Wait, that sounds familiar.
These new tools make my shopping a breeze. I can play in my room while I'm falling asleep.
How about Wayfair, you got just what I need?
No, it's not good.
That was pretty good.
Discover easier home shopping at Wayfair, where it's find and unwind.
Wayfair, you've got just what I need.
Don't waste your time and money at the chain store. They got the best auto parts, brake parts, suspension parts, and dealer parts too. The website's so easy to use. The lowest prices and fast delivery too. All the parts your car will ever need. All the savvy folks are buying parts at RockAuto.com. All the parts your car will ever need. RockAuto.com.
Are you unhappy with how you're cleaning your ears? You need a solution for earwax, but drugstore remedies often don't work.
I got water in my ear, and I could hear it in there, and it wasn't coming out.
I constantly have blackout, yellow coming out of my ears.
The WaxRx ear wash system is doctor-developed and the method physicians trust the most. WaxRx is the ultimate at-home ear cleaning tool because it thoroughly removes wax and soothes your ears with a pH-conditioned formula.
It was just amazing, the difference ultimately.
5-10 minutes of your time, so easy. Anybody can do it. You could do it with kids. You could do it for yourself.
WaxRx comes with everything you need to safely, gently clean out earwax and condition your ears at home for greater comfort, fewer ear problems, and maybe even better hearing. You can have the complete reusable WaxRx system delivered to your home for less than the cost of a doctor's visit. Call now or visit buywaxrx.com. Use promo code WAX for free shipping today.
Never more ready to fall in love again. Never more ready to fall in love again.
Diamonds at their lowest price in years. Half-carat solitaires are now $3.99, 1-carat $7.90, 2-carat $9.50 per carat, plus 1-carat studs $3.99. Insane prices on thousands of GIA diamonds and designer rings. Buy direct, the Jewelry Exchange.
Fox News Channel on Sirius XM. Your favorite shows on Channel 114. Plus, every story, every 15 minutes. Fox News headlines 24/7 at Channel 115.
Our nation mourning the loss of Senator John McCain while honoring his decades of service to the country.
Here with her thoughts on this, Sandra Smith, co-host of America's Newsroom, who is filling in this morning as the host of Fox News. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Rachel. Hey, Griff. Hey, Ed. And Ed, by the way, was watching your commentary all evening on this. And what a story and what a life looking back at John McCain. It's been a real pleasure to do so, to hear about his amazing career this morning and last night, and looking back at all of those moments that made John McCain, the senator that we grew to know in his later years, and where he came from, 23 years in the U.S. Navy, presidential candidate, obviously long-serving senator, and our thoughts and prayers are with his family this
Absolutely.
morning.
And you're going to have Kelly Ayotte and John Kyle, a couple of his former colleagues, in the Senate as you fill in on Fox News Sunday this morning. People will see that all across the country, and then later, of course, on Fox News Channel. What do you want to hear from them? Because, as you say, a lot of tributes are pouring in. This is a time of great division in the country, as you know, Sandra. You do this every day as you interview people and you go through the news. And it seems very difficult to bring people together. But in his final Senate speech, John McCain talked about how it's not perfect, but America is a place where we try to settle our differences peacefully.
Certainly, and a big question about who's going to fill McCain's Senate seat. And Senator Kyle is there's whispers that he could possibly be a replacement. The Republican Arizona governor is responsible for making that decision and appointing someone to McCain's seat. But really interesting that we've got the Kavanaugh confirmation hearings coming up next week. And Ed, as you know, that's going to be a defining moment, which way everybody decides to go on this. And Senator Ayotte was the Sherpa for Neil Gorsuch, as you know. She came to Washington and was rallying support for Gorsuch, and then John Kyle is doing the same thing now for Brett Kavanaugh. So we'll certainly want to ask both of them about that.
And Sandra, you've got another story out there that is quickly will address the fact that the report, not confirmed by Fox News, but a report out there that the FBI is ignoring the lion's share of Hillary Clinton emails. The president tweeting also about it yesterday, saying that the big story out that the FBI ignored tens of thousands of crooked Hillary emails, many of which are really bad, also gave false election info. I feel sure that we will soon be getting to the bottom of all of this corruption. At some point, I may have to get involved. So we don't know what that is.
Well,
but
that was the key line in the president's tweet, right? At some point, I may have to get involved. And he seems to be going off of this report that cites a technical glitch for why the FBI may have not seen not just thousands, not just tens of thousands, but hundreds of thousands of Hillary Clinton's emails. So big question as to what the president is suggesting he may do about that. So we'll see.
Yeah, so you got Corey Lewandowski, I believe, and others talking about that.
Well, yes, and this feud with Jeff Sessions continues with his own attorney general. So we're going to have the former attorney general, Alberto Gonzales, on and ask him, what does he think the president needs to do about that? Lindsey Graham said this week that the president is entitled to have an attorney general that he has confidence in. So what does Alberto Gonzales suggest? So we'll talk to the judge about that. And staunch, loyal defender of the president, Corey Lewandowski, will join us as well.
All right.
Excellent.
Thanks, Sandra.
Sounds like a great show.
Good
Thanks,
luck.
Sandra.
Appreciate you stopping in.
Thank you.
The DNC now limiting superdelegates. So will this actually fix the problem for Democrats in 2020? Bernie Sanders wishes maybe they fixed it 4 years ago.
That's right. Plus, Governor Mike Huckabee is here live coming up.
There's not a crumb in this house, and yet I still find bugs.
Insects aren't always looking for food. Sometimes they look for a place to lay their eggs. That's why I'll create a plan using the latest science to keep your home from becoming their maternity ward.
CoQ10 is the #1 cardiologist recommended supplement for heart health. I take Cunol CoQ10. Why? Because Cunol has 3 times better absorption than regular CoQ10. Cunol, the better CoQ10.
Who wants to eat from a pet bowl that's 100% non-toxic, lead-free, BPA-free?
The Pet Comfort Feeding System by WeatherTech. Made from U.S. stainless steel, with the bowls certified by the NSF. Designed to catch spills and messes. If it's safe enough for us, it's safe enough for them. Choose the perfect size and color at petcomfort.com.
Don't let a fall steal your independence. With an ADT medical alert button, you can summon help from anywhere. There's no cost for equipment, and monthly monitoring starts as low as $29.99 per month. And with ADT Health's Price Lock Guarantee, we'll never raise your rates. Call 888-ADT-4458 today and get your medical alert system shipped to you as early as tomorrow. ADT, always there.
Introducing new SmartMouth Premium Zinc Ion Toothpaste.
It is just a different kind of clean feel. There's no gritty, everything feels smooth in there, and it really lasts.
Find SmartMouth Toothpaste right next to SmartMouth Mouthwash at Walgreens and Walmart.
Online dating? I know people meet that way, but where would I even begin?
Open laptop, go to OurTime.com, look for free.
It's easy to take a look on Our Time, the fastest growing dating site for people over 50.
I was on heroin.
I used crack cocaine.
We are the Addiction Network. And if you have a problem with drugs or alcohol, you need to call the number on your screen now. Addiction is a disease, and you can't go it alone. The call is free, and so is the consultation. If you have private insurance, your treatment could be covered with no out-of-pocket cost. So call the Addiction Network now.
Call 800-260-8775.
We decided to go with Bathfitter after doing a lot of research.
Yeah, we loved how they could install a new tub right over the old one without tearing our bathroom apart.
Yeah, what we didn't expect was to be blown away by the quality. And that's what happened. They showed up in the morning, and by the end of the day, we had this absolutely beautiful new bathtub. It was better than we could have even imagined.
And it's guaranteed for life.
I actually love our bathroom now.
You too can have a bathroom you'll love. Call now or visit bathfitter.com.
Some quick headlines. We begin with a Fox News alert. 8 people are dead, including 6 children, in a devastating house fire in Chicago. 2 others are being treated at a hospital along with an injured firefighter. Officials say no smoke detectors were found inside the home. The cause is still under investigation. And a train slams into a dump truck, killing 2 people and injuring several others. Both people in the truck died after allegedly driving past the crossing arms. 11 of the 50 passengers on board were taken to the hospital. 2 are in critical condition. The Texas incident is under investigation. Passengers were shuttled to Fort Worth. And turning to extreme weather, life-threatening flash floods are putting Hawaii on notice. Parts of the Big Island receiving as much as 45 inches of torrential rain. The devastation trapping families inside of their homes. As Tropical Storm Lane begins to drift away from Hawaii, another 5 to 10 inches of rain is expected throughout the day. Ed?
All right. Thanks, Rachel. The DNC voting to limit the influence of superdelegates in their presidential nominating process with one thing in mind for voters.
Making sure that at the end of the day, when the process is done to select the Democratic nominee, that they feel like their candidate got a fair shake.
Well, that's what they didn't get in 2016. You'll remember the superdelegates were blamed for swaying the nomination in favor of Hillary Clinton over Bernie Sanders, causing an outrage among his supporters. So will this move help the Democrats heading into 2020? Here to debate, Fox News political analyst Gianno Caldwell and Democratic strategist Jason Nichols. I want to get a quick word from both of you at the end about John McCain if you'd like to offer that. But first, let's stick to the debate. And Jason, what took you so long?
Well, I think this, of course, was an important move in terms of transparency and restoring confidence of younger members of the Democratic Party in the process. However, we always have to remember that superdelegates have never swayed an election. As much as I supported Bernie Sanders, Hillary Clinton won the primary fair and square. It was never really in the hands of superdelegates. I think the key is moving forward, we have to make sure that the party is inclusive, not only of young people, but also the people who are feeling disenfranchised by the getting rid of superdelegates, particularly people of color.
All right, let me bring in Gianno, because Gianno, are you buying this from Jason that it didn't have an impact? He's trying to make this claim that it didn't impact 2016, and technically it didn't come down to the superdelegates. But late in those primaries, when Bernie Sanders was closing in, we kept hearing, even if he wins all these primaries, it doesn't matter because in the end, the superdelegates are going to put her over the top.
You know what? And what was interesting is before any other Democrat got in a race, Hillary Clinton had almost 400 superdelegates that were going to vote for her. So certainly that set up a narrative that she was the one that was anointed to get the nomination. And I think that played very true. I used to talk to, during the 2016 election, Simone D. Sanders, who was Bernie Sanders' press secretary, on a regular and consistent basis. And that was one of the issues that her and her candidate believe really disenfranchised them from moving forward. And honestly, had it not been for the superdelegate process, we maybe have had a very different outcome when it came to the presidential election. So with that being the case, Democrats definitely needed to get their house in order and provide more honesty and fairness, I should say, when it comes to this process.
Jason, I see you shaking your head no with a smile, I should add. You're not doing it angrily. You're smiling, but answer Giano. But also, I talked to a lot of Democrats who say they worry that they don't have anybody to take on Donald Trump in 2020. I know it's early, but now if you take out the superdelegates, which had an impact where the establishment could help have a say here, it might be an even wilder process for Democrats where it's going to be harder for them to figure out who's going to be in charge.
Well, I think having a lot of options, which we have right now, is actually a good thing. Give people a lot of options to choose from, and then we can unify behind one candidate, whoever comes out on top. So I think that's a good thing. I'm laughing, you know, number one, Giano is my guy. I got a lot of love for Giano, but he's flatly wrong here. As he is every now and again, he happens to be wrong, and he's wrong here. Superdelegates have never, been around since 1984. They've never really decided an election. They did not change this election. I have love for Simone as well.
It's not about deciding him. It's about momentum, and that's what gave Hillary Clinton the momentum. So we can all agree
Hillary Clinton started out on top.
Well, Bernie Sanders called it rigged.
She was well known from the very beginning. She was the front runner from the very beginning.
Okay, final word on that.
And it was a rigged system.
Give you 15 seconds each about John McCain and his legacy. Giano, you go first.
You know what? John McCain wasn't simply a war hero. He was my hero politically. And during a very heated battle for president in 2008, I recall the moment where he was at a town hall and a woman said, I don't trust Obama because he's an Arab. And then Senator McCain pulled the mic back and said, no, he's a decent family man who I happen to have fundamental disagreements with. And I got to tell you, Ed, that made me extremely proud as a young African-American that was new to the party to see that level of civility, which is becoming more and more rare today.
An important point. Quickly, Jason, I wanted to give you a chance as well. I got about 15 seconds.
I just want to say that, as the son of an Army veteran and the son of a grandson of a World War II sailor, I had great respect for Senator McCain and his sacrifice, and anybody in any leadership that questioned his sacrifice should be ashamed of themselves today. And we know that some of our leadership has questioned that. And I want to send my condolences out to his family.
All right, Jason, Giano, we appreciate your insights on all of these big issues today. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
All right, we've got a lot more to say about Senator McCain. Mike Huckabee is coming up next. He's going to share his memories as well.
Find a good fight. For reasons known only to God, I've had quite a few tough ones in my life, but I learned an important lesson along the way. In the end, it matters less that you can fight. What you fight for is the real test.
Just because we smoke our new beef short rib and brisket for an absurd number of hours doesn't mean we love it more than any other meats. It just means you probably will. Arby's, we have the meats.
I'm really big on knowing why I'm doing something based on some kind of science, and I'm always looking for those